Earthquakes, volcanoes, fires, floods, and another severe weather outbreak is lurking just over the horizon. It's a wild ride, but I'll break it all down and tell you exactly what you need to know. A new episode of Cold Rain's Weather World starts right now. Hello again and welcome to another feel-good edition of Cold Rain's Weather World, the only weather program that leaves you smarter, more confident, and even taller than you were when you tuned in. Okay, well, maybe not taller, but still you'll be smarter and more confident because you'll know about the weather and maybe a few other things too. We've got a lot to get into today. We've got volcanoes and earthquakes and severe weather and flooding and all kinds of stuff has been happening. And so we've got many things to talk about. We're going to zoom through some of those. We're going to spend a little bit more time talking about our severe weather threat because we've got several days. It's a multi-day threat of all types of weather hazards, and we're going to get into it. And then we're going to take a look at the weather over the next 2 or 3 days to get you through the weekend into the first part of your work week. And we'll take a look at what the long range has in store. And in fact, some of the long range models are starting to show a cool period, maybe spring cancel. I don't know. We'll take a look here and see in just a minute. I'll have timestamps for all of the various segments of the show in the description of the video so you can skip right ahead. If you're not subscribed to the channel or if you're brand new, please consider subscribing. It'll help us reach a broader community. I certainly want to provide a valuable service for you to help you understand what's going on with the weather and maybe even educate you a little bit about how the weather works along the way. And we'll have some fun too. We do some fun things here. So anyway, I appreciate you tuning in. Leave a like, leave a comment in the comment section. If there's something I can pray over for you, I'm happy to do that too. But anyway, glad to have you here. And as I said, we're going to leave you smarter than when you came. Exempli gratia with today's Weather IQ. And by the way, that is Latin. And you have seen that before. This is a little bit of an aside, but you've probably seen that before or at least heard of it. And maybe you don't know it by name, but here is how you probably have seen it written. You see this? Exempli gratia. It means, for example. So, for example, we're going to take a look at today's Weather IQ. And we're going to start here. And this is our question for the day. If you don't know it, then I'll reveal it to you at the end of the show. If you do know it, then write it in the comments section and show everybody that you know it. So what is the measure of rotation in the atmosphere called? Coriolis reduction, helicity, vorticity, or tornadic rotational relativity? All right, I'll let you think about that while we get on with the rest of our show. Now, we're going to start here with last night. We're going to start with last night, I should say, not here, but we're going to start with last night. And yesterday afternoon, evening, through the night, lots and lots of rain fell in South Texas. You've probably seen some reports of this and saw some pictures of flooding, as a matter of fact. But over 10 inches of rain fell just north of Brownsville, south of Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi, you guys picked up 2 inches or so, but certainly look at all this red area. This is 3, 4, 5, and then you get into this magenta and you get into 6 and 8, even 8 to 10 inches of rain fell down here. So lots of flooding in Texas. So that's one thing that's kind of been going on here. There's still a marginal risk of flooding in a large area here over most of Louisiana, Texas through the evening, and then a slight risk to southeastern portions of Texas and southwestern portions of Louisiana. So pay attention there through the night. Keep your guard up for potential heavy rain and flash flooding. There's a little system that's just meandering down there, and it's producing lift, and showers and thunderstorms are training over the same regions. In fact, the WPC has their precipitation outlook, and you can see here these darker colors indicate 1 to 2, 2.5 to 3 inches here. So just be on guard if you're in the deep south here, southeastern Texas, southwestern Louisiana predominantly as you go through the evening. Another weather hazard we've got out here is fires. There are wildfires burning all over the country. We're looking at our wildfire map and you can see active fires all over the place. Southern California, over here in Kansas, Oklahoma. Out here in my neck of the woods, we've got fires burning. Table Rock Fire is burning fairly intensely down here in South Carolina. A lot of smoke from these fires has drifted up into Morganton. I was looking out the window today and went for a walk, and smoke is just all in the air, and it's just you can just see it, see the mountains in the background, and they're very, very shrouded in smoke. So lots and lots of wildfire activity. There are some red flag warnings up. There's wind, and it's very dry, and of course warm. And so that's just bad when it comes to fire conditions. And so don't burn anything outside and start additional fires, because the fire crews are working around the clock to try to contain these as it is. People have had to evacuate. It's been a mess. You can see this fire weather map, and I'll put it in the link to the map in the description of the comments. In the comments, if you want to. I'm saying the description of the comments. I mean the description of the video. That's what I'm trying to say. I'll put the link to the map in the description of the video, and you can access it if you want to see if there are any wildfire alerts are ongoing in your neck of the woods. So we'll get some relief, especially in the central and eastern portion of the country, as we go through the weekend and early next week, hopefully. And then, so we've got our volcano observatory in Alaska has two mountains or volcanoes on alert. So Mount Spur is on an advisory alert today. And of course, Anchorage is just downwind of that. So you guys are in an active level 2 alert. And then Great Sitkin is level 3. So that's a watch. So be careful if you're traveling out here. So that's our volcano update. Now, unfortunately, there was a big earthquake, 7.7 in Myanmar, and it destroyed a lot of buildings, lots and lots of people. Thousands of people are feared dead. This is the LA Times website, and I was reading this article, but if we scroll down here, we can see another picture. But just lots and lots of devastation over there. You've probably seen or heard about it at least, but you can go here and look. But just lots of pictures of just horrific devastation in that part of the world. So let's keep them in our prayers. And so that's what's going on the earthquake front. Hopefully we will settle down and not have any more of that activity to report. Now, we sometimes do a fun fact on our show, and so I want to do that, kind of get into that a little bit, and tell you about soundings today. So, I always want to make sure that you understand some of the terminology that you hear in the weather. And one of the terminology, or one of the terms that you hear from time to time, is soundings. And many of you probably know what that is, but back in the old days, you may not know this. Back in the old days, when people used to sail with ships, and there was before technology, and they used sails and oars and everything else, they had to understand where the bottom of the seafloor is, and so they would drop these ropes over the side of the ship. The leadsman would come out and drop a rope, and it would have a weight on the bottom, and usually an iron weight, and the rope would be marked at several intervals. And so they would drop the rope down, and when the weight hit the bottom, they would look at the rope and measure the interval. There was a specific distance, usually I think it was a fathom between each notch in the rope, but they would then understand how many fathoms down the bottom of the surface was, and that would help them understand where they were in relation to the bottom, and so they would not run aground. Well, today we don't need to do that. We've got sonar and all of the other technologies that help seafaring vessels go, but what we do have and need to do is measure the atmosphere. So a sounding is just a measurement of a body, a depth. It can measure depth. It can measure all kinds of other things. In the case of weather, it measures the attributes of the atmosphere: wind, pressure, temperature, and all of those kinds of things. So balloons are launched twice a day in some cases. In terms of funding, we've seen some funding cuts, so some places are only launching balloons once per day, but twice a day balloons are launched around the country, and the atmosphere is sampled and measured. All of that data gets fed into these various models that we talk about. Models spit out projections based on all of that. So that is soundings, and that's how it's used. And as a matter of fact, sometimes people refer to those skew T charts that you see when we talk about tornadoes and severe weather. Those are called soundings too. They just show visually the attributes of the atmosphere on a piece of paper, and the lines kind of run off. I don't have one pulled up, or I would show it to you. But those are useful in understanding the profile and can help you predict severe weather. So soundings are observed data. Their models also put out forecast soundings, and that's what we look at when we look down the road to see, hey, is there going to be a tornado threat? Is there going to be instability for thunderstorms? Is there going to be cold layers in the atmosphere if we're looking at severe weather, and all, or winter weather? So soundings are important. That's what that means. It's just a measurement of the atmosphere in the case of meteorology. And so I thought it would be good for you to know that. Now, we're going to jump back in here and talk about the upcoming severe weather threat. I told you the other day and yesterday and the day before that they'll probably add a threat back in for Saturday, and they certainly have here in Kansas and Missouri, predominantly in northern Oklahoma. And this hatched area is a significant, basically, the threat for tomorrow is large hail. There is capping on the atmosphere, particularly back here down in Texas and farther west, meaning there's a warm layer up here. Air wants to rise, and when it hits that warm layer, it is no longer colder than the air around it, and it's no longer, air warms at the surface and it rises and it keeps rising and it accelerates upwards as long as it is warmer than its surrounding environment. So there's a mid-level warm layer, we call that a cap. Air rises and it gets to that cap and it says, uh-oh, I'm no longer warmer than this warm layer up here. This warm layer is warmer than me. So it goes back down to the ground. See, and it probably doesn't make that noise, but that's how it works. In the instant, sometimes that air can be forced through the cap and then it will blow up and accelerate upward. But the reason this is added back in is because it looks like the cap will get broken down here in eastern Kansas and western Missouri. And so we could see the potential, given freezing levels in the atmosphere, we could see the propensity for large hail, very large hail, in fact, in some of these areas here. The threat's a little bit more uncertain down in Texas. Can the cap break? If it does, there could be wind threat here as well as a hail threat. So we'll have to watch that and see, but it looks like there's going to be a cap. It'll be a little bit less robust farther east, and that's why we now have a severe weather threat, because thunderstorms are predicted to break out, and they will be severe. Now, our big weather threat comes on Sunday, and you can see a big outline of a slight risk here all the way from Texas up into the Great Lakes. This red area is an enhanced risk, and it's associated with a 15% or more of severe weather. And you can see this black hatched area over top of that is significant severe weather. We're talking about significant hail, significant wind damage, significant tornadoes. Not just your average 58-mile-an-hour wind gust. You could gust into the 70, 75, 80. If we can organize some of these lines of showers and thunderstorms that coalesce together and they can become organized, you can see a pretty significant, maybe even a long track wind threat with potential gusts into the 80s. So we're going to watch that. Long track tornadoes are not out of the question, but this is a significant deal for Sunday. Then as we get into Monday, the threat shifts east. There's some question marks about instability to the north, but the shear is going to be very prevalent through the atmosphere. Spin as well as speed shear as you go up, and the instability will be much more prevalent down here in the lower portions of the mid-Atlantic into the southeast. So we should see more severe weather on Monday. Tuesday, not so much. It doesn't look like there's going to be any severe weather around on Tuesday, but then Wednesday we're back to it again. So look here, back into Wednesday into Thursday, another round of severe weather possible in the mid and lower Mississippi River valleys, into the Tennessee Valley, into the Ohio Valley. So a very, very, very active pattern is shaping up. I'll show you here in a minute. The European model actually has sort of a continuous severe weather threat for several days for portions of the South and Mid-South, and we'll take a look at that. One of the things that we look at when we assess tornadoes is what we call the significant tornado parameter. It sort of combines instability with rotation and helicity and some of the other things that go into making tornadoes, and it gives you this index. And where the values are greater than 1, so that they start to show up where you get this this blue color, you start to perk up, your ears start to perk up for potential larger tornadoes. And so if we put this on motion, this is valid for overnight Saturday night. So we start to get into the day on Sunday. Look what happens. You start to see some of those values pop up down here in Texas and Oklahoma, into Missouri. That slides over into Arkansas and slides east, and you really start to see some of these blues and yellows. Now you've got a big area of values over 1, right? And some of these areas here are over 2, so 2 to 3. This is a potential problem given the instability that's going to be around this time. This isn't going to be one of those situations where you have this tiny little warm sector and you don't have any instability. There's going to be plenty of instability to work with, and so you see these significant tornado parameters exist in association with that, and that all pushes off as we go through the day on Sunday into Sunday night. and then overnight on Sunday, it sort of diminishes, and then it picks back up a little bit as we get into Monday afternoon, and we get sort of to the end of the NAMS range here, so it begins to be less useful. But you can see the point is the potential exists for tornadoes anywhere in these areas here. So watch out. All hazards are possible as we get through the weekend, especially later in the weekend, and watch out for significant tornadoes as part of that overall threat. Now, one of the things that we look at is upper air energy, and I'm going to get to a different display here so we can see this a little bit better. So when we look at the environment for severe weather, we try to understand where the energy is that can provide the lift for the atmosphere to create, you know, help facilitate thunderstorm development. We also want to look at the flow and how the flow is working. Is it out of the northwest? Well, that would be kind of a dry flow. If it's out of the south and southeast, we get kind of a moist flow, particularly out of the Gulf of Cold Rain here. So what are we looking at here? So this is 12Z Saturday. Okay, that is 8 a.m. Saturday morning. And so look what happens. East Coast time here, by the way. So we've got some energy. These little pockets of energy, by the way, this is our energy. And if you pay attention to this map, you might even get a clue as to the trivia question. Look at this. Here's some energy. Here's some energy down here. This is what's causing all that rain in Texas. Look at that. That's out ahead. Here's some energy in the southern branch. Here's some more energy. There's energy everywhere. It's a very complicated system, which is why it's difficult to pin down exact types of severe weather and exactly where it's going to set up in the coming days. Lots of energy in the flow. It's a fast flow. Things are moving along, and we're going to see that here. So watch this. So we put this into motion Saturday morning. We go on out to Saturday afternoon. Those pieces of energy kind of move along, and out ahead of these pieces of energy is where you find lift in the atmosphere. Behind, you find a little bit more sinking, and you have a little less in the way of activity. But look here, you've got this broad sort of divergence of these lines, which means there's just sort of a broad lift here. When we had that big low pressure that was 975 a week or so ago, you have big lift out ahead of that thing, and then you have a cold front extending down. It sort of lifts too, but it's a little bit more acute in terms of the upward motion. There's vigorous upward motion, and that tends to create organization around your showers and thunderstorms. When you have just sort of a broad lift, it's not coming in and lifting the whole atmosphere rapidly and violently. You get kind of this broad vertical motion pattern overlaying an unstable air mass. Then you have the recipe for more supercellular development. When you have that in association with turning with height and wind shear with height, then you have more chance of tornadoes. And so that's kind of what we're seeing here. We're not seeing a massive wound up storm. So as we go through the day on Sunday, and then we get into Sunday morning or Saturday, then we get into Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, and you see these pieces of energy just sort of traversing through here. They're providing lift. Overnight Sunday, we're still seeing energy here in the jet. That's going to provide lift, even though we see nocturnal cooling, and oftentimes we see instability go down with nocturnal cooling. We're still going to be unstable, and we're still going to have lift. And so we could see some of those storms persist into the night, overnight on Sunday, into Monday, and then Monday afternoon. All of that kind of moves off. You can see how these pieces of energy sort of consolidate maybe a little bit and then move on off Monday afternoon and drive everything offshore by Monday night and Tuesday until the next system comes along, and here it comes back in the flow a little bit farther out than we're going to talk about right now. But that's how that works, and that's what's going on. Our instability, this is the measure of what we call CAPE, convective available potential energy, and we need CAPE if we're going to have thunderstorms, and especially severe thunderstorms. We would need to see quite a bit of CAPE. So look what happens here. Saturday, a little bit of CAPE, not too bad. We get into Saturday afternoon. Look what happens. This really surges in. We've got a very broad warm sector. Dew points are just flying in off the Gulf. We're going to have 60-degree dew points all the way up into the Great Lakes. So we're no lack of instability this time. If I do, watch this. This is kind of cool. It's like a wave. Look at this. It comes in waves, and there it goes again. Wave, 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 wave. I'm kind of going out in time, but that's just interesting. I wanted you to see it. Saturday afternoon, we get the CAPE starts to build up over Texas, Oklahoma, into Missouri. So we could start to see thunderstorms firing there in those areas. Then as we go back, we get into Sunday afternoon. Look at this. Lots and lots of CAPE here. Green, these light greens, that's enough to create severe weather when you have good wind shear, and we've got good wind shear. But look what happens. You get all of these yellow and orange colors down here. We're talking, 2,000-3,000 joules of CAPE. and that just progresses through the day on Sunday into Sunday evening. Plenty of CAPE through the Tennessee Valley, and then going into Monday afternoon, Monday, into the evening, that progresses all off to the East Coast. So we've got plenty of fuel here for thunderstorm development. And so what does the European model show us here? It shows us where it thinks the thunderstorms are going to develop. And don't take this as gospel. Just know that it's seeing activity. And when you see activity in this environment, you have to, your ears should perk up. And so this is Saturday afternoon. So we start to see some thunderstorms develop as we get on into we're at Saturday morning now. Sorry, that was a little premature. So Saturday morning, then we get into Saturday afternoon, and you start to see some of those storm cells firing here in Kansas, Nebraska. That's North Dakota up there. That's not Kansas. That's North Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Texas. Even it's showing some activity down in Texas. So we'll have to watch that. And then that little system moving to the east out of Texas is firing some activity down into Louisiana and Mississippi in the lower Mississippi Valley. And then we get on into Saturday night. And then we start to see the activity pick back up Saturday night and through the night into Sunday as forcing comes in association with that upper level disturbance that we saw moving in. So even though it's overnight, you're still seeing clusters of showers and storms. So we're going to have to keep our guard up and have a way to stay alerted through the overnight hours. So Sunday through the overnight hours, as we get into Sunday morning, bright and early, looking at about 8 a.m. here Sunday morning, we're seeing showers diminish over in Missouri and pick up over here in Middle Tennessee. Now watch what happens Sunday afternoon. Things just explode. Look at this. Big clusters of showers and thunderstorms back over Texas, Arkansas, Missouri, up into the mid-Mississippi Valley. And you start to see some bowing. When you see these bowing segments, that's indicative of wind as well. So we're going to see wind line segments with wind damage, bow echoes through the afternoon and evening on Sunday. Maybe everything organizes into a bit of a line overnight on Sunday and then kind of falls apart in some areas as the heating of the day diminishes. But you still have plenty of CAPE down here along the Gulf and plenty of broad lift to help organize these thunderstorms. As we get into Monday morning, things start to fire back up as the cold front crosses the mountains, gets on into the Piedmont, down into the southeast, up into the mid-Atlantic. Supercells are possible, organized wind threats are possible, and everything else in between, hail. So that is your outlook in terms of how the timing of everything and how everything kind of looks as we go through the weekend. And that's that. So that's just a redundant screen. The only other thing that I wanted to kind of tell you today is do a quick this day in weather history because it was a significant day here in the Carolinas. In 1984, on March the 28th, there was a pretty massive tornado outbreak. It still stands as one of the benchmark tornado outbreaks for these areas. 24 confirmed tornadoes, including 7 F4s at the time. This was before the enhanced Fujita scale, and it resulted in 57 fatalities and over 1,200 injuries. That tornado outbreak, I worked with a lady several years ago who lost a daughter in that. A tornado hit their house in North Raleigh, chimney fell in on the little girl, unfortunately, and claimed her life, and so that was pretty sad. But very, very devastating tornado outbreak here in the Carolinas. Hopefully we don't see anything like that again, but over the next couple of weeks, we're going to have plenty of opportunities all in the mid-south and south and southeast for severe weather. It's a very active pattern, so we're going to be watching how things kind of unfold here. So as we go through the day, tomorrow on Saturday, we'll just kind of zip through this real quick. Let me get to a better display. Actually, I can stay on this display. So we're seeing, just we didn't really talk too much about this, but I'm talking about it now. Up in the north, above this cold front, we're going to start to see temperatures get below average up here near the border. As this system works through on Tuesday, we're going to see a cooling behind it, but still up here in New England, up along the Canadian border, even into the northern plains, back into the northwest, temperatures are going to be a little bit cooler than normal above this front, north of this front. South of the front, very big warm sector, lots of potential shower and thunderstorm activity, severe weather possible here where we looked at before on Saturday, flooding possible down here in Louisiana and Texas, and potentially ice and snow developing along the upper Great Lakes. So we could see some potential significant icing up in this area here. On Sunday, big severe weather threat encompassing areas through much of the Ohio Valley, all the way down back into the lower Mississippi Valley and west of there. Big snow out here in Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, ice and snow, heavy snow up here in northern Great Lakes, and ice and snow, maybe some rain on the southern side of that. But so watch out on the northern tier for winter weather. Winter is not gone by any stretch of the imagination. And as we get on into our temperature outlook, we can see um, really looking at the averages here. So we're looking at Saturday afternoon. If we roll this forward Saturday afternoon and get on into Sunday afternoon, look, temperatures are, this is above normal and below normal. So the darker the oranges, the more above, the darker the purples, the more below. And so you can see as we get on in Sunday into Monday, the system moves through. Very warm in the east, very cold behind that compared to normal. In fact, Monday afternoon, looking at above normal again here in the east, fueling that severe thunderstorm threat, and then cool air working back in, and a little bit warmer out in the Rockies. As far as temperatures, actual temperatures go, Saturday afternoon, 80s, 70s, 80s, surging all the way up in here into the Great Lakes. Still colder, below freezing in parts of New England. 30s and 40s back across the northern tier, back into the northwest quadrant of the country. Sunday, more of the same. Down here, the warm sector is getting squeezed as this cold front comes through, and we're starting to see 70s, 80s get pinched off a little bit back west, but still plenty of warm air and stability out here in the south, in the eastern quadrant of the country, except for the northeast and northern Great Lakes. And then Monday afternoon, really starting to cool off here across the northern plains and essentially the middle sections of the country, mid-Mississippi Valley. All that's left hanging on here is 60s and 70s along the east coast, and then down here along the southern border. So, and then as we look out in time, there are some hints across both the GFS suite and the European suite and the European AI that we're going to see a significant blocking episode set up. That is this area up here. If you can see this, big ridging out west, big trough in the central or eastern part of the country, depending on which model you prefer. That would be our jet stream pattern there. Cold to the north, warm to the south. And look at this up here in Canada. This big blocking area of blocking. This is going to make the flow slower and prevent systems from just zipping into the west, zipping out of the east, and it's going to slow things down. It could potentially help create a fairly larger storm system down the line, but in the meantime, cooler temperatures will prevail if this takes place over much of the center part of the country and spilling into the east. If we take a look here at our anomaly maps, look at this big purple blob. I'm doing something I don't recommend doing, and that's using an operational model, but I'm doing it more to illustrate a point that as we get out in time, some of the models are showing this big blocking episode up here in Canada that kind of traps cold air beneath it in storm systems too. So we'll watch it and see how this might cancel spring for a little bit if this comes to fruition. This is 16, 17, 18, 20 degrees, getting close to 20 degrees below normal. And so this is pretty impressive for this time of year. Our total precipitation footprint still continues to see an active jet traverse the country, bringing lots of boatloads of rain here and snow to the west coast, snow in the higher elevations. Systems track across the northern tier and redevelop in the plains, and you get this big footprint of rain, which will hopefully quell some of the dry tinder for these wildfires and help the firefighters put these things out. So we're looking at a fairly tranquil start for most portions of the east and southeast as we head into the weekend. If you've got any plans, enjoy those Saturday afternoon. It should feel pretty nice. Get outside and enjoy the weather. Sunday, have alternate plans. It's going to be a bumpy ride as we get Sunday into Monday. Maybe farther east along the East Coast, you can enjoy the weekend out there. But in the center part of the country, well, the east central sections of the country, mid-Mississippi Valley, Tennessee Valley, Ohio Valley, you all are going to need to make some alternate plans and stay weather aware. As we get on down the road, we're going to be looking at more and more severe weather threats into next week. We might have a several-day period where it's just severe thunderstorms possible every single day. So we're going to need to watch that as we get latter part of the week. And so anyway, enjoy the weekend, folks. I'll have probably a quick update tomorrow on the severe threat. We won't go into as much detail as we did today, but I wanted to make sure that you were prepared and understand what's going on with the weather as we get on into the weekend and early next week. So with that, we're going to wrap up with today's IQ question answer. And here it is. If you recall, the question is, what is the measure of rotation in the atmosphere called? Coriolis reduction, helicity, vorticity, or tornadic rotational relativity. And if you didn't know it, the answer is vorticity. We look at spin in the atmosphere way up high to understand where areas of lift and areas of sinking motion are occurring, because when we understand where areas of lift are occurring way up in the atmosphere, then we understand where we're likely to see clouds and precipitation. And likewise, when we see sinking air in the upper atmosphere, we're seeing sinking air at the surface, and we're seeing high pressure building in usually, and warmer conditions, hopefully, or colder in the wintertime. So that is what we look at. It's as a matter of fact, this is a map of that. We saw a similar map earlier, but this map is at 500 millibars, and it shows us, you see this little area here, these brighter colors show us, wow, I'm on yellow. That doesn't really help us very much, does it? Let's go to blue. See these little brighter colors here. Here's one up here. Here's some little perturbations in the flow. They don't have to be all that strong sometimes to create lift when you have instability at the surface. It can just kickstart it, and then the air goes boom, and you got thunderstorms. But we've got a stronger one kind of moving in, and so that's what these, and sometimes you see these big upper lows too, like that's working into the west coast. So that's what this map shows, and that's what vorticity is, just areas of energy. People use the term interchangeably, vorticity, spin, energy. When you hear that, that's what this is. Now you know. Now you know about vorticity, and now you know the weather, and folks, that is a wrap for today. And as always, this is Cold Rain reminding you that if other stations run 24/7, we got you covered 48/14. Enjoy the weather, folks. Stay weather aware this weekend. Have multiple ways of getting alerts, and take it easy. We'll see you back tomorrow.